Chapter 7. The next day, 3 pieces of news arrived at the Tarlenheim country house, where we were staying. The first was that the people of Strelsau had heard I was badly injured while I was hunting in the woods, and they were worried. Secondly, the Duke also thought I was badly injured, although he understood better now how I got my injury. I heard this from Johann, who I now trusted and had allowed to go back to Zenda. Thirdly, Marshal Strakens told me that Princess Flavia had ordered him to take her to see me. When the princess arrived at Tarnheim, she was relieved to see that my injury was not serious. However, Johann told us shortly afterwards that the king was looking weak and ill, and we realized that we had to do something quickly. We could not wait any longer, for he would surely die. It was perhaps the strangest thing in the history of any country, that the king's brother and the pretend king near a quiet country town during a time of peace acted out a war for the life of a sick king, with just a few people knowing about it. That night, after Princess Flavia had gone to bed, I changed my clothes and went outside to join Captain Fritz with 7 men. We all had weapons, and we rode our horses into a wet, windy night, taking a quiet back road towards the castle of Zenda. It took us about an hour to get there. A few hundred meters from the castle, we asked the 7 men to wait with the horses while we continued on foot up the hill to the moat around the castle. Here, Sap tied a rope to a tree, and I took off my boots, using the rope, to climb down into the water. Although the night was windy and wet, it had been a warm and sunny day, and the water was not cold, and I swam without difficulty round the castle walls. I could hear voices inside the castle, but it was so dark that I did not think anyone could see me. I remembered what Johann had told me and thought I must now be near to the window to the king's room. Then I saw the giant pipe that led from his window to the moat, and I was about to go nearer when I heard a noise. I now saw there was a boat next to the pipe, and in the boat was a guard carrying a large gun. I went up to the boat as quietly as I could. Then I saw that the guard was Max Hof, the brother of Johann. He was breathing slowly and deeply, and I saw that he was asleep. I swam slowly and silently up to him, and though I hated to do it, this was war, so I stabbed him to death. Now I had time to look carefully at the pipe. I soon realized that the bottom of the pipe was not fastened to the wall, and I could see light coming from its far end. I tried to push it, and although the pipe was very heavy, it moved just a little. Then I heard voices. One was the king, and the other was a man with an English accent. It was Detcherd. "Time for your sleep," said the Englishman. "Why doesn't my brother kill me now?" said the king in a weak voice. "The Duke doesn't want you to die, not yet anyway. Sleep well," said Detcherd. Then the light disappeared, and I could hear a door being locked. Now all I could hear was the king quietly crying. I realized nothing more could be done. I realized nothing more could be done that night, so I climbed in the boat with Max, dead at the bottom, and rowed back to the rope. The wind was blowing hard now, so I did not worry that anyone would hear the boat. When I arrived next to the rope, I tied it around Max's body and asked Sap to pull it up. Then I climbed back to my friends. Sap whistled for our 7 men to come and get us with the horses, but as they got nearer, we heard several shots and loud cries, and then a voice called out, "They've got me, Rupert! There are 7 of them! Save yourself!" We were running towards our men, when a horse arrived with Rupert Hensau on it. It was so dark that he did not see us, so I took a large stick and ran forward towards the horse's head. Now surely we had him, but he was too quick. He waved a sword at me and cut my stick in half. I stepped back, and before we knew it, he had disappeared into the night. I later found that Lohengrin and Krafton were both killed by our men. Although the fight had cost us 3 of our own men, we went home with heavy hearts for our friends, worried about the health of the king, and angry that Rupert had escaped. The next day, I received a visit from the chief of police in Strelsau. He told me that the British ambassador had reported that an Englishman called Rassendale had disappeared near the town of Zenda. They had found his bags at a nearby train station, and a man called Mr. Featherly from Paris believed he was traveling with Madame de Maubin. He asked if I knew that lady. Yes, I do, I replied. I believe she and her servants were guests of Duke Michael. I see, said the policeman. Go back to Strelsau and tell the ambassador what you know. I'll look into this for you, I told him. Return in 2 weeks, and I will tell you what I've found. I wanted to have at least 2 weeks without any more difficult questions. My game had almost been discovered. But with the policeman in town that day, there could be no more fighting around the castle, and Rupert clearly felt safe enough to ride out on his horse. When I saw him, I quickly caught up with him. He looked surprised to see me. How's my brother today? I asked him. He's well, he replied. He hopes he'll soon be in Strelsau. Rupert, you're young. Why are you doing this? If you let your prisoner go free, I can help you, I said to him. You don't have to work for my brother. Rupert looked ahead of him and said nothing for a minute. Then he spoke quietly. You may be right. Attack the castle bravely. I'll tell you when. But Fritz and Sapt must die, and so must Michael, and the king. That will leave 2 men alive, you and me. You will stay the king, and I'll have a reward. Would you really work against Michael? I asked him. He's not a good man, he replied. He makes me angry. I nearly killed him myself last night. Think carefully about my plan. With that, he rode off down the road. Later that day, Sapt could see that I was deep in thought, but I did not tell him what I was thinking. There was a knock at the door, and a boy brought me a message. It read, Johann will take this letter for me. I warned you before. The Duke discovered that I helped you that night in the summer house. He is now keeping me a prisoner in his mansion because he cannot trust me. Please, if you can, rescue me from this house of murderers. Antoinette de Maubin. What could I do? Time went on, and I knew that for now I could do nothing to help either Madame de Maubin or the king. I soon heard that the people in Strelsau did not like the fact that I had been away from them for so long. To keep them happy, my messengers told them that Flavia and I had arranged a date for our wedding, news which was greeted with great joy. Not everyone wanted to know this news. However, Johann told me that the Duke was furious to hear about the wedding. At the same time, the king had become so ill that the Duke had asked for a doctor to examine him. The doctor advised him to set the king free at once, but the Duke refused, adding that the doctor would have to stay with him until he was better or died, whichever came first. Johann also told us that Antoinette de Maubin was helping to look after the king, who was guarded by 2 of the remaining 6 men at all times. Although Johann did not want to return to the castle, we paid him well to go back and act as our spy. I found out from Johann where all the people stayed at night in the castle and the mansion, and who had the keys to the doors. I'll give you 50,000 pieces of gold if you do what I ask you tomorrow night, I told Johann. I hear there are new servants at the castle. Do these servants know the king's a prisoner there? No, they don't know who the prisoner is, he answered. So, if they saw me, they would think that I was the king? I asked. Yes, they would, sir. Good. Tomorrow night, give this letter to Antoinette de Maubin. Then, at 2 o'clock in the morning, open the front door to the mansion. Ask no more questions. Now go. When he was gone, I told Sapt and Fritz about my plan. It was our only chance to save the king. Sapt would take some men to the front door of the mansion. When Johann opened the door, they would quickly enter and tie up the servants if they did not want to help the king. At the same time, Madame de Maubin would cry out for help from her room. The Duke would surely come to see what was happening, and we could take him. Then there would only be 2 men left guarding the king, so he would need to move quickly before they hurt him. Meanwhile, the house at Tarnheim was to be filled with lights and music, so that people believed we were having a ball. Marshal Strackings would guard the house and the princess, and if the next day we had not returned, he would then march to the castle and ask to see the king at once. If the king was not there, he would quickly take Princess Flavia back to the capital, where she could become queen. So that night, at midnight, Sab took his men to the mansion. I rode alone a different way to the castle, with clothes to keep me warm, weapons and the rope. Half an hour later I was back by the moat. I left my horse and gun in some trees, tied some rope to another tree and climbed down into the water. Once more I swam back to the pipe below the window. But now the pipe was fastened to the wall and no light showed. I looked up at the mansion and saw that the lights were not on the windows to the Duke's and Madame de Maubin's rooms. Then I heard voices and I saw Rupert walk toward the castle onto the drawbridge with Duke Gutte. "Let's go across before they lift the drawbridge for the night," Rupert said. They walked across, and shortly after the bridge went up. A few minutes later Rupert returned alone. He looked around him and then quietly climbed down some hidden steps to the moat and swam across. Then he climbed some steps opposite and disappeared back into the mansion. What was he doing? It seems that I was not the only one who had a plan for that dark, warm night. To be continued in Chapter 8.